Hey guys, it's Elena. Welcome back to my channel. So this week I made a collared button-up gingham dress. I'm really happy with how it turned out, so I'm going to walk you through all the steps. So to start, here's the pattern that I went off of. It is a McCall 6696 pattern. I saw this at Joann's and it was on sale for $2. Which is a steal. The only adjustment that I made was to change the pleats in the skirt to a gather. I'm just the type of person who likes a real good gather, so that's the only adjustment I made. But besides that, I went ahead and just cut out all of the pattern pieces. I wanted to do the version that has a sleeve and has the collar and is more full in the skirt. So cut everything out, and I am using a gingham print, so you do have to be a little bit more cautious when you're cutting everything, trying to make sure that everything is lining up and straight. Once I did that, I went ahead and marked on my bodice pieces where the darts should go. So I marked on the triangles and then I pinched it in, put pins all along where I wanted to sew, and then went ahead and did my stitch. Make sure when you're done to flip it over and make sure that it looks really nice and flat and that you don't have to redo anything. The back on this dress is really special and unique in the fact that it has a top back yoke, and then the center of the back has a little gather, and so here I'm just marking between the places that I want to gather. So I'm just doing a quick gathering stitch. I have a video where I talk more in depth about gathering, so I will put it in the card in the top corner and also link it down below. I went ahead and I gathered the top and the bottom of that back panel. Once you finish gathering and it feels sufficiently puckered, you're going to go ahead and pin it right sides together to that back top yoke piece, and make sure that you're lining up both sides, and then you can ease in the rest of that gather to make sure it's fitting and it's the right length, and then go ahead and sew along the raw edge. Once you have one side of the yoke attached, you can go ahead and attach the other side. So basically what we're doing is we are encasing that raw edge and making it look really nice. So we're putting right side of the yoke to the wrong side of our back panel and sewing along, making sure that the stitch is smaller. So I'm using probably about a 1/4 inch seam allowance here, so that it is nice and all encased. And here it is. It looks so good. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And the gingham print is even matching up. Yes, yes, yes. So once you have that part done, you can go ahead and attach your front bodice panels to the back at the shoulder seams. So just go ahead and pin and then sew it together, right sides together. Make sure that you are pinning and sewing along the right side of your back and that back yoke flap. You're going to fold and iron in about a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch. And then what we're going to do is kind of like before, we are going to encase that raw edge, and so it looks really nice. Next, it is time to tackle those side seams, so just go ahead and line them up. And I always suggest that you line up in the armpit, and then you can always trim off the bottom, but line it up and then just do a normal seam allowance. Now it is time to actually encase those shoulder seams. So I went ahead and made sure that my fabric was folded over enough, and then I pinned it And I think that the pattern calls you to do a slip stitch, but I cannot convince myself to do any unnecessary hand sewing. So I did a stitch in the ditch where I sewed inside that seam on the top. And so then on the back it caught and it actually turned out perfect. Next is the sleeves. So I went ahead and did a long basting stitch along the shoulder of each sleeve so I could gather it a bit at the top at the shoulder, and sewed the sleeves together, right sides together along the bicep arm area, and then you are ready to insert them into the bodice. So it's kind of tricky to put them in sometimes, but I usually line up the armpit side seam and make sure that that's nicely nested and then just go around. And if you need to put the garment inside out or however makes sense to you, do it, but pin it and then put it right side out just to make sure that you've put it in correctly. I have in the past put my sleeve on the wrong side out and that's never fun. So pin it, make sure it looks good, and then secure it with a nice straight stitch. To finish off the sleeve, I opted to do a double folded hem, just like I always do. So I went ahead and folded it in about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, folded it in one more time, and then ironed it and pinned it all along. And then you can just do a normal stitch and it will look really great. Now it is finally time to start the skirt. So luckily this dress has pockets. I love pockets. So you're going to put them right sides together, stitch it together, and then you can put the front skirt and back skirt together. So line up the pockets at the side seams, at the top and the bottom, and then pin all the way around. And then you can just sew all the way around where you have your pins. So now it is time to take in your skirt somehow. So the pattern has you pleat the skirt, but I just really like how gathering looks. Even though I just made a pleated skirt, I mean, it looked good there. But in this case, I really wanted to do gather. So I went ahead and did 2 big long basting stitches and then pulled on the top 2 strings and did the gathering magic. I went all the way along and then I pinned the waistband onto my bodice, and at this point it's very, very important that you try it on and make sure that you like where the waistband is sitting on you. That is so important. I have like the world's shortest waist and torso ever, and so as you can see, my waistband, I pulled it up like 3 or 4 inches from where the bottom of the bodice originally was. So I pulled it up, pinned it, secured it, and then secure the skirt to that waistband and make sure that you're attaching it to that interfaced side. Interfacing in this case is very super important and it really plays a big part, so don't skip out on that part. Go super slow and attach the skirt to the waistband, and because it is gathered, make sure that you're not catching any fabric and that nothing is puckering weird. And then once you're done with that, you can admire your work and then pick out any leftover basting stitches that you can still see. Now, this is very important. Make sure that you actually caught everything all the way around before you start pulling out your basting stitches. I definitely don't know that from personal experience. Definitely not. So just make sure you are watching how it went before you pull anything out. Yeah. Moving on, pin the button strip to both sides of your bodice front and skirt front. And at this time I went ahead and also did my hem. So I went with a double folded hem. I seem to really like those. I just think it's really easy and it looks really nice. So fold it up twice and then secure it with a straight stitch. Go ahead and secure that button strip on, and as you can see, as a side note, I did fold in one of the other sides slightly, and it's going to run over at the bottom, but you want that. So you're going to fold it right sides together, and then you're going to go and do a stitch. And so when you clip it and you clip the corners and you fold it right sides out, it will look really nice and folded, and it'll just look and have a really nice finished bottom, and will match that nice hem that you just did. So I went ahead and folded and pinned the rest of that button strip in half, and again, because I have gingham fabric, it's really important that it looks straight. So I went and did a pin, and then again, the pattern has you do a slip stitch, but I just can't bring myself to do it. So I went ahead and did another stitch in the ditch, and just be careful and go very slow, and then you can move on to the collar. So you are going to stitch your collar interfacing and top to the bottom, right sides together, and then you're going to sandwich it in between your collar bands. Stitch those all together. Make sure that nothing is puckering or pleated or anything. You want that to be really nice and straight and clean, because it will be pretty noticeable when you go to attach it. So when you do go to attach it, you are going to pin the right sides of your neck to the right side of your collar band, and make sure that you have it all nice and centered. And then you can attach that with a normal straight stitch and your normal seam allowance. Trim any excess fabric and clip it if you feel like that's necessary. And then you're going to fold the top of your collar band over top of those two raw edges. And again, you could do a slip stitch and hand sew it down, but you know me, I did a stitch in the ditch. And then it is time to move on to your buttonholes. So I had 12 buttons. I marked where I wanted the first and the last button to be, and then I measured it and divided it by 12. And so I did each buttonhole 2.5 inches apart. I marked it with chalk, did my buttonholes. I have a video all about how to make perfect buttonholes. And then I attached all of the buttons on. This took a little bit of time because there are 12, but it was so worth it, because do you see this? Oh my gosh. It turned out really nice. I actually love this pattern, and I definitely think I'll make it again. I really like how it turned out. The collar and the waistband I thought were very clever, and I'm actually really happy that I went ahead and did a gather at the skirt instead of a pleat. I think it looks really nice and summery. Now, if only that ugly brown grass could get the memo and turn green, that would be wonderful. I'm so ready for summer. Please like and subscribe. It would really help support my channel.